Hello and welcome to CIS 1199. I'll be talking about your game document, your final project. Like I said before, this is similar to your midterm project, except we're going to cover all the information in the second half of the class. So high concept right here. These are the talking points of the points that they're going to be in your document. Premise, player motivation, unique selling proposition, target market, genre, target rating, platform, license, competitive analysis, and goals. These are all the concept of your game. The proposal will be gameplay, online features, backstory, synopsis, and risk analysis. So a couple of things from previous chapters and then some things from the later chapters as well. Shared on Blackboard is a link to download the full documentation that I have for you explaining what I'm looking for in each one of the bullet points here. Again, just like the midterm, I do want a document and a presentation, so a slideshow and a document. I know we won't be having an in-person class to present the slideshow. That is fine. But still do a slideshow, put more text in the slideshow than I wanted in the midterm. Obviously, the midterm I thought we were going to be presenting, but we did not. That's where we got cut off. So put more text in the presentation than you would have otherwise done so that I can see what you've had in there. And then fill everything out into the document. I also have an example document on Blackboard for you to look over. The example is just a made-up game that I have from a previous semester. Let me open that for you. Called Story Game. And in this example, which one am I going to go over here first? Premise, so Story Game is a classic JRPG. I like JRPG because of the stories in them, but something that I always wish I could do in a JRPG is watch sequences of the story standalone without playing the game at any time. So in Story Game, you can play through the game, just burn through it, and you can watch all the cutscenes, you can watch all the story as you progress normally, or you can skip them, or you can backlog all of them and then go back in and watch them. You can watch them with friends and family. You can share your experiences. If for those of you who have kids, you play through Story Game and you burn through a few chapters, and then with your kids, you can watch the story up until that point. So you can have a completely different experience than even the same game by normal. The way games are normally made, where you have to play a certain amount of game and then you get a certain amount of story. And you can rewatch them, watch and rewatch any parts that you like in this one. So the basically is just a story mode and a play mode. And you can, while you're in play mode, you can just toggle on and off whether you want to skip the cutscenes or watch the cutscenes. And then any cutscenes, any story parts that you have progressed far enough to be able to watch, you can go into story mode and just watch them like episodes of a show. So that's the basic idea of Story Game. And then if you have a look through everything that's in here, you'll see everything that I'm looking for in the document. Okay, what I don't have for story game is a slideshow for you. I only have the document for that. Sorry about that. So let me go over each one of these points that are in the document so you can have an idea of what those are. So the premise, that's going to be the hook. That's going to be basic, real 1-2 sentences like I have in story game here. The premise is just a couple sentences. This is the real quick version of what the game is. Okay. Want to beat the next level but don't have time for in-game dialogue? Just beat the level. Watch the story unfold later when the time's right for you. Very simple. That's going to be like almost the commercial version of the description, okay? Player motivation. This goes back to Chapter 3, when I talked about aesthetics instead of genre. So why is a player going to want to play this game? What is their motivation for choosing this game over any other? So in story game, the player motivation is, it's a classic, it's a JRPG game, but you get to save your story for when you actually want to watch the story, and then you can come back and watch the story. You can re-watch the story. It's a totally new experience. Okay. Unique selling proposition, which in my document it's actually came first. So what features or tech or what is unique to this game that the marketing department can then use to play that up and sell it, put that in their commercials and their ads and that, and use that to sell to players. So I have that right here. Every RPG tells a story, yada yada. Play as little or as much of the game as you want without the story, and then when you really want the story, come back and watch the story unfold in front of you. So like a movie does. The best of both worlds, right? That's the unique selling point of story game. Okay, so story game is not, I don't have a game idea. It's just this one thing. It could be any game. Target market, target audience. That's other earlier stuff from previous chapters: age, gender, player suit, etc. Put as much in there that will kind of fit. So at minimum, I want these three things: the player suit and the player types, the completionists and the discovery, that kind of thing. Put that stuff into the target market, target audience. Okay. Genre, rating, platform, license requirements. Put all that stuff right in there. Okay. I have genre, license. Okay. Again, make sure that you're explaining the genre and story games point. Yeah, it's a JRPG, so I'm just not going to write JRPG. I'm going to give a complete thought as to what this game is. So first and foremost, it's an RPG. I'll actually change that to JRPG. All right. And then I'm going to explain a little bit about it as well. Okay. Next slide, competitive analysis, which is a kind of important part in this document. What in your game sets it apart from the competition? Okay, that was the unique selling point. In here, what is your competition? So depending on what games you're writing about, You can kind of make up what games you know are coming out in the future. And you could directly link those to say, this is your competition. Or you can just say, all right, if I'm making story games, a JRPG, my competition is any other JRPGs that come out, and Netflix is my competition, actually, right? Because the selling point of story game is you can grind out however many levels you want, do however much playing as you want, and then come back later and watch the story during the time that you would have been watching Netflix. So my story game's big competitor is Netflix. Now your game, if you're making the next Battle Royale, your competition is going to be all the other Battle Royale games. All right. If you're making the next Animal Crossing, your competition is going to be the current Animal Crossing. All right. If you're making a casual mobile game, your competition is going to be all the other casual mobile games. What is your competition going to be, and what can you do to help ensure that you come out on top, or that at least you don't totally fail when compared to your competition? So story games competition is Netflix. In large part, it's going to be Netflix, right? What is story game going to do to set it apart and make sure it wins? It's never going to beat Netflix, right? We can't beat Netflix. But because it's a game, it's delivering something that Netflix can't deliver. Netflix does have the choose your own adventure kind of thing, so they have a little bit of novelty going on right there, but they don't have a whole game. So story game is a whole game and a whole movie packed into one. Nobody else has that. So that's my competition, and that's what sets me apart and what makes me better than my competition, all rolled into one. Okay, that's your competitive analysis. What next is, what are your goals and your expectations for this game? So let's go back a couple of years and say, all right, I'm making Pokemon Go. My goal and my expectation is to break the mold, is break that old story of how gamers are just, pimply-faced teenagers and young adults in their basements not doing anything. Get them to go outside, play games while they're outside. That's what Pokemon Go did. Surprise, surprise, a lot of people didn't like that gamers were outside, and they told them to go back to their basements, right? Like, that wasn't exactly the thing to begin with. But that was a big goal of Pokemon Go, was, hey, we're going to take advantage of GPS, of mobile phones and that, and we're going to get people to go outside and meet other players that they didn't even know were there, and have a truly social game experience in person. That's a very lofty goal that they had. Right? Your game doesn't have to have that big of a goal. Story games' goal is to get players to share their game, share the story of their game with non-gamers. So, for example, I'm a gamer. My wife is not a gamer. That's not uncommon. But if I were playing story game, if it were a real thing, I could play story game and I could say, hey, I'm playing this game as this cool mode where after I've played so many levels, we can just watch the story of the game. So I can share it with you. You can experience this. You don't actually have to play a game. We'll just watch it together and see if you like the story of it. And you and I both know, we all know, that games tend to have really great and immersive stories. This is in no small part because we're dedicated to it, because we spent so many hours actually playing the game, whereas the spectator won't have that. So it'll be a little bit harder for them to really dive into the game. But that's the goal of story game, is to be able to allow non-gamers and gamers to share a game. So the non-gamers are not going to be playing. They're going to be spectators. We're going to have gamers and spectators of gamers having that shared experience. So then they can talk about things that happened in the game. Wouldn't it be pretty cool if we could talk about the heartbreak that was felt when Sephiroth killed Aerith? Spoiler. Non-gamers don't know that, but if they were able to watch a game play out without having to play it, then they would know that. Right? So that's a pretty cool goal. Gameplay list. Just describe elements of play, things that are unique, and things that are pretty standard. So don't go into great detail with your gameplay. If you're making the next Battle Royale game, say it's the next Battle Royale game, and tell me what sets it apart. Tell me what is standard. Say, hey, it's all the standard stuff plus this. Okay, that's going to be the gameplay. If you have online features, okay, which is not a requirement. Your game does not have to have online features. Story game doesn't have online features. It's a JRPG, no online features. But if you do, describe what your online features are and how they go hand in hand with both your gameplay and your goals and your competitive analysis. Okay, so a lot of your games probably will have online features. And no, you don't just get to say it's not online. If everything else says this game is supposed to be played online, you have to include the online features. And tell me, include online features in your competitive analysis and your goals and gameplay. Include reference to them as they make sense. Okay, you don't just get to omit them. That would be nice, but no. All right. Backstory of your story. Okay, I don't want a really long backstory, but some kind of a backstory. All the stories that you have chosen should have some kind of a backstory. If you're picking a Disney character, the backstory is standard Disney backstory. Give me, 1 or 2 paragraphs of the backstory, no more than 2 paragraphs. Tell me what has led up to what's going on, the lead up into your story. Okay. Next, give me a synopsis of what your story is. So if you're doing the Hercules story, the backstory is Hercules has gone through 4 out of his 8 trials, so on and so forth. And the synopsis is he's doing the next 4 trials. That's what this game is. Okay. I don't remember if it's 8 trials or not. I'm just going to guess it was 8. But that's a very quick backstory and a synopsis. Okay. Risk analysis. For the risk analysis, the chapter 11, chapter 11 or 12, the book talks about risk analysis. For this purposes specifically, I want you all to think about your risk analysis as if you are an indie developer. That shouldn't be a very hard thing to imagine, because right now you're all indie developers, if you're any kind of a developer at all, right? You're a one-person indie development shop, right? Think about your risks from that point of view. What problems are you going to have developing your game? Let's say that you're a designer and you're not a developer. You're not a programmer at all. You're a designer. What is a problem that you're going to have? You need to hire a designer, a developer. Okay, that's a point right there. If you don't do that, you don't have a game. Correct. Conversely, if you're only a programmer and you can't draw stick figures, you're going to need to hire a designer. Okay, so you're the single person indie developer, and these are your risks. Okay, you're going to need to get some sort of financing. If you're making a game that already has an IP, you're going to have to get licensing for that IP, get permission to use their IP, and I want you to look up who owns the IP and write down, I have to get licensing permission from XYZ company who holds the rights to this IP. Okay, look it up. You probably already know who it is, but look it up just in case. There may be a surprise here and there. Funding is a huge risk factor. If let's say you're the developer, that's nice, and you're not total crap at drawing, okay, not total potato. So you can do some of the design work. So there's less people that you have to hire. That's less funding than that you need. But you still need more than zero funding. If you want your game to be produced in any reasonable time frame, you're going to have to quit your day job and work full-time building this game, and you're going to need to pay the rent somehow, so you will need funding somehow. So include that in your risk analysis, funding, okay? Also, all right, don't forget about, risk analysis is not only about bad stuff. Risk analysis is, you can say, well, I'm the programmer and it's not a very difficult game that I'm programming, so very low risk in terms of programming. I'm going to use, let's say we're going to program it with Android Studio, so that's free. We're going to use a game engine in there that is very affordable, so no worries with that. Those are all low risk things that you can include in there, okay? If you're going to develop a PlayStation game, then a high risk is you have to invest in a development kit for PlayStation and figure out how all that's going to work for you and your one-person indie development team. So I would actually recommend that's not a very good path as an indie developer is to try and go directly into a PlayStation game. Maybe put that off on the horizon somewhere and say, okay, we're going to develop this game first for PC or mobile because the bar to entry is so much lower, therefore the risk is lower. Okay. So talk about those kind of things in your risk analysis, decision-making process, and that, all right? That is the last part there. Let's have a look at the documentation I have for you here. Double check that. Yes, in the presentation, I don't want you to include every single one of these bullet points in the presentation, okay? So I have a short list of 6 bullet points to include in the presentation, the most market value ones, because of the presentation originally is supposed to be you trying to come to the class. The class is the game publisher that's supposed to potentially finance your game. And so the things that go in your presentation are the selling information to the publisher. So title, the hook, the unique selling proposition, the genre, target rating, and player motivation. So genre is important. I know I've said that I don't like genre personally, but it is important when you're expressing your views to other people because that's a common thing that people have come to understand. Target rating is important for marketing and finance as well. And then last, player motivation. That's going to be very important for marketing because that gives the marketing team their go-to between the hook, the unique selling proposition, and the player motivation. That's going to be the marketing is going to run away with that. Don't keep your presentation between 2 and 5 minutes because you're not doing the presentation. Some of these notes, don't worry about because we're not going to actually have presentations. All right, I think that's all of it. Put both of your documents, 2 documents, 1 document, 1 presentation, put them in a zip file and submit them just like most of you did for the midterm. There were a couple of exceptions there, but do try and do that. It makes it much easier for me to organize the files when I grade them. And if I have any difficulty organizing the files, then there may be a mistake on your grade. So the one way you can help me prevent making a mistake on your grade is to put your 2 files into a zip file when you submit them. Make sure that I can't make a mistake for you. Okay? That is everything for this final project game design document. Not really a game design document, though. I should change the title of that. But that's all the information I have for you for that. All right. Stay tuned and we'll see you next week.